Hi, my name is Carolyn Hazard, and I made this 10-minute video in response to all your queries about the jelly prints. Thank you for your responses. This is orange I'm putting on the plate. I'm making it with yellow and red because I like to have a little variety and variegation and not have the color too even. It's a very opaque layer, but it is a pretty thin film. After I put it on the plate, I'm going to spray it with a little bit of water that I put into an optician's bottle for cleaning eyeglasses because it has such a nice fine spray. You can see under the jelly plate I have a piece of paper the same size as the paper I'm going to print onto. I've also made a frame of the same paper, so all three of them line up. That's how I get that nice clean edge. I have tried tape, I have tried the fancy corners, but this works the best. I have sped parts of this up. The whole process took me about an hour. I do have an hour video in which you can get all the details about the kind of paint I use, the kind of paper I use, and so on. Here you can see me lining up the corners on the frame and the paper underneath so that it's going to be exact every time. And I've chosen to use the frame to just cover my edge of my jelly plate a little bit. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I let the jelly plate edge show. And here I'm using a printmaking tool to iron out the paper. I don't use a roller because it's too hard, and if I put masks down then I get a shadow. The nice thing about the jelly plate is it's the same consistency as our fingers, so you can really get between everything. So that's the first layer, and you can see how nice and neat that looks. There I've already rolled out the second layer, blue. I've cut that part out of the video. And now I'm putting down the masks. These are masks that I just have in a little Tupperware beside me. I cut them as I go through various jelly plate designs and just keep them. Once these masks are covered in acrylic paint, they'll last 3 or 4 times. I cut them out of failed jelly plate prints so that I don't waste a heck of a lot of paper. Plus they're already covered in acrylic paint, so they're nice and strong. You can see I've already used them, that's why they have all those colors on them. So it's handy too because every time you design a print, you might make a few more masks and you can just keep them all, and then eventually you've got a lot to choose from as you go. I don't like my shapes to overlap because then I get big blob shapes of one color. So right now I'm just trying not to overlap my shapes, but that might change later. And I try to choose some big shapes and some small ones, some round ones and some straight ones. And the differences just make it look kind of cool. So then I put the frame back on. Some people tape these down, but there's no need to tape them down. You don't really need to, because the print that I'm going to put on now always matches the frame, right? Because you're matching the corners. So this works nicely for me. It took me a long time to figure out how simple this was. There we go. So that's what we have. And you saw the plate change color because I used a piece of wettable tissue to lift some of the paint that was still wet. So I just ironed it on and I just put it off to the side because I can use it for collage. And now I'm going to put on the paint that will be the third layer. So this is a light ultramarine from Golden. And then I'm putting on pink from Artist Loft. It's academic level paint. And then I'm going to put on an ochre that happens to be Winsor Newton. So these are pretty good quality paints. I have found, now that I know what I'm doing, that it's worth it to use better paints. They have a lot more pigment in them. I put a little tiny bit of white on because when I post my jelly prints, I like the light behind them. So I thought, how can I get that effect, in real life? So I add white, a little bit of white to my color, and my prints are a little bit lighter, which is nice because I do tend to choose dark. So for this layer, I like a little bit more variety in the color, so that some of them will show up blue and some of them will show up yellow and some of them will show up pink. And when I'm laying the masks on, I will design it in such a way that you don't necessarily see that edge. Now I'm spraying it again with the water in that optician's bottle. It has a number of effects. First of all, the water makes the print smoother. I don't like it when the paint is really, really thick and you get a lot of whiskering. And I find that when I wet the paint plate, it doesn't happen. Also, because the paint's wet on the plate, it gives me a longer time that it's open to play with the masks and such, so I can take my time. I found with jelly plate printing when I was first learning that all the reels sped everything up. I can see why now, because I'm doing it too, because I mean, people's attention span's only so long, right? But you can go very slowly, and I find when I spray it, I can go even slower. So when I spray a layer on the jelly plate, which is what you're looking there, I can easily play with it. It'll stay open like 10 or 15 minutes. It also makes the color come off really well onto the paper. And I'm not sure whether that's true for lower quality paints as well. So I've got the actual print propped up in front of me. And of course, when I put it down, I'm going to reverse it the way I'm putting it down. And I'm trying to design it, by looking at it and deciding where the open spaces are, which will be opposite to where I'm seeing them in the print. Okay, so now I turn it around, right? I mean, we all do it. Print is backwards. So match the frame up with the corners of the template underneath, even though that's not entirely necessary. All that matters is that your print corners are matched to the frame corners. And it didn't go that fast. I cut some out there. So there it is there. And then I'm just showing you an old print that didn't work out, a fail, because I'm going to draw some new masks on the back of it, because now I'm designing the final layer and deciding what I want based on what I have. So I'm creating a stencil, and this time I'm going to print the holes. And that's the key idea, is that there's a difference between printing the positive space as holes or printing the negative space when you mask it with positive shapes. So think about that. This is the last layer. I'm printing through the hole so that I get exactly what I see and exactly the color that I want. And I'm printing that exactly over top of all the layers I already have. If I were to use a mask right now of plants, I would cover up everything I already have, and my plant would be what I already have. So my plant would be red and the negative space would be all turquoise. Whereas now my plant last layer is going to be turquoise and really pop, and everything around it is going to be that red and purple that I already had. And there you can see I put a little white in again. Now some of my friends say, why don't you just paint the layers? Why don't you just paint the painting instead of print it? So, I thought about that. That's a good question. But painting doesn't give me this particular effect. I did go through a phase where I made the jelly prints and then I drew vases and flowers on them and painted the negative space. But it really wasn't as beautiful. It didn't have the same effect. The painting ends up being quite a bit flatter for me at this point than the wonderful surprise of the jelly printing. So I just like the printing. I just like the effect, which is why I do it. I like the surprise. I got a little paint on the top of the stencil there, so it'll transfer to the paint. The actual print didn't want that. Okay, so this is the last layer. And those turquoise plants are just going to pop right on top of all that red and purple. So there you have it, a 4-layer print. Show me what you do.